Coastal Data Explorer, where we're coming from, the CABA hub model, and then moving on to the development of a coastal data hub. So as Amy just said, the 3Cs was funded by the Environment Agency. This is the Championing Coastal Coordination Project, which we worked on last year. And as part of this project, we undertook an audit of the coastal data platform that we currently are using, which is called the Coastal Data Explorer, and also a number of other coastal data platforms. If you work in that field, you'll be aware that there's multiple coastal data platforms. It's actually quite overwhelming. So this is the Coastal Data Explorer, which my colleague Lucy developed when she worked at Liz Trust. And it's a map-centric data portal. It's thematic, has coastal habitat restoration opportunities, issues and characteristics. These themes relate to the themes that you'll see on the CABA data package as well. And it's really for catchment to coast practitioners. So in where we're coming from developing the Coastal Data Explorer and moving towards a Coastal Data Hub, as part of the user needs analysis that I undertook, these are some of the things that were found that would be really useful and beneficial in a Coastal Data Hub. So people wanted to be able to print a map of data layers of interest. They wanted to do suitability analysis for habitat restoration. They wanted to be able to demonstrate data and evidence to stakeholders. And I think this is very important. They wanted to manage data on coastal nature-based solutions that they were delivering. There were also some additional functions that they wanted on this Coastal Data Hub. So I'm going to briefly mention the CABA hub model. So we have a number of hubs on the CABA website. There's a link here to those hubs. And they are moving towards using Esri hub software. And these data hubs essentially are a platform with a community of users that feed into them. An example of one of these data hubs is the NFM hub, which is the Natural Flood Management Hub that we're developing. And how I see it is it's like a positive sort of loop of data collection that then feeds into funding opportunities. So the way that we're going to develop this is going to have personalised dashboards so that the users and the community of users have a benefit to the data that they're gathering, and they can use it as a communication tool with stakeholders. And there'll be a number of tools on there, for example, that will make it easier to actually work with that data quite quickly without necessarily having to be a data expert yourself. So taking it back to how we'll develop a coastal data hub, so learning on all the work that we're doing with the other Esri hubs, we're going to develop a coastal data hub in consultation. So we'll be going to consultation on this next year, pending funding from 3Cs, which is this funding stream that Amy's just mentioned, and we're going to build on this research that we've already done to develop this. So we're hoping to have a first iteration next spring. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Okay, thank you. And next up, we've got Alison Furber from the Rivers Trust talking about participatory modelling on the Water for Tomorrow project.
And I have a very unsmooth transition here, changing laptops briefly. Yeah, sorry everybody. I'm the awkward person that didn't use PowerPoint. Right, so the topic of this session is that we're talking about communicating data to make it count. So I think it'd be really useful to start off by thinking about what do we actually mean by making it count. And I think that we probably mean to affect change. So we've been doing a bit of thinking about where we, CABA, are at in terms of our ability to communicate data to affect change. And I think that we're really, really good at getting the data out there. We do lots of really beautiful story maps and lovely data visualizations that really makes use of the data that is available and puts it out there for everybody to access. We've also got a lot better at really effectively explaining that data using simple everyday language, and also at collecting local data and kind of incorporating that into the story so that we're making use of that critical local knowledge that stakeholders have. Oh gosh, excuse me. So I spend a lot of time putting together story maps and data visualizations on behalf of both the Rivers Trust and also CABA. And I think that story maps are absolutely fantastic when we're dealing with stakeholders who share our agenda. But I'm not sure that they're enough when we're dealing with more diverse stakeholders who may feel that they have quite a lot to lose through change. So I don't know if you've heard the story of the blind men and the elephant, but in the story, there are 6 blind men, and they go to the palace of the Raj because the Raj has an elephant, and they want to know what an elephant is like. So each of the men reaches out and touches the elephant, but they get into an absolutely massive argument. And the problem is that each of the men is touching a different part of the elephant, and they don't realise how large and complex the elephant is. Well, I think that that's a really good analogy for the problem that we face when we're trying to communicate data. So if I'm a technical specialist and I'm touching the trunk of the elephant, and I'm trying to explain to another stakeholder, perhaps a farmer, who's touching the tail, that the elephant is like a snake. Of course, the farmer thinks that I'm completely mad because their experience of the elephant is that an elephant feels like a rope. So in order to overcome this problem, we've been trying a bit of a different approach on a project called Water for Tomorrow. The approach is participatory modelling, and we're really, really excited about it. We're hoping it's going to be a bit of a game changer in terms of our ability to effectively communicate data to affect change. I should say that there's lots of different elements to the project, Water for Tomorrow, but today I'm only speaking about the participatory modelling. So Water for Tomorrow is a project, it's all about finding local solutions to the problem of water scarcity. And we're using 3 catchments in East Anglia as case studies. So what we've done on the project is we've worked with a number of different sectors who are present in those 3 catchments, and we've helped them to map out the challenge of water scarcity from their perspective. Okay, so here you can see an example of a model that we put together with the agricultural sector. Now, the story that the agricultural sector wanted to tell is that farms are businesses, and if we want a thriving agricultural sector, it's really important that farms are profitable. So the problem with water scarcity is that if farms are not able to get access to the water that they need for their crops or for their livestock or whatever, that really impacts on their profitability. And if that continues for prolonged periods of time, we may see farmers choosing to move out either of the catchment or perhaps of the sector altogether. And if we aren't growing food, then we're importing it. And quite often that food's being imported from places that are even more water scarce than we are. So that's the story that the agricultural sector wanted to tell. I don't have time right now to go through all the details. This is a technique called systems dynamics modelling, and I'm not going to go into it in any detail, but if anybody wants to catch me after, I'm always very happy to talk through the technical thing. So once we'd worked with each sector to put together their model, we put that into a single whole system visualization. So here you can see the 5 sectors that we've currently got incorporated. So at the heart is the hydrogeological model. It's really the nerve centre of the whole system. The hydrogeological model passes information about the surface water available to abstraction to the water, agricultural and industry models. Each of those models themselves will then depending on their demand for water and the water availability, will abstract either the water that they need or the water that's available to them. So the water company, agricultural and industry models feed information back to the hydrogeological model about the amount of water that they're actually abstracting. The agricultural model also feeds information about land use change back. The hydrogeological model passes information about key hydroecological parameters, things like the level of the water table, the composition of the flow, how much base flow compared to surface water runoff is in it, things like the amount of water reaching the sea. It passes that information to the ecological model. The ecological model then simulates habitat change based on the fitness of the environment for the different types of habitats and feeds that information back to the hydrogeological model. So why is that useful? Well, going back to our analogy of the blind man and the elephant, this whole system model is a bit like a sketch of an elephant. It explains to a stakeholder who has experience of one part of the system how their experience fits into and relates to the rest of the system. The feedback that we've had so far has been really positive. We found that stakeholders have really appreciated the things that they care about being incorporated into the discussion by being included in this model. And we've also found that it's been really useful for us to be able to identify the repercussions of potential policy options or mitigation measures. So we've overall, it's been a really, really positive experience. But having said that, the project's still underway. We're anticipating that the models could throw up some uncomfortable truths for some stakeholders, and we are yet to see how we overcome those challenges and how stakeholders respond to it. So perhaps that's one for CDUG Forum next year. We can update you on how we're getting on. Okay, so at the beginning I said that we're really, really good at developing beautiful story maps and really interesting data visualizations, and that's absolutely true. Well, perhaps participatory modelling could be another string to our bow to really help stakeholders develop that kind of shared and holistic understanding about how the system works. Because it's that shared and holistic understanding that's really important if we're going to communicate data and make it count. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Alison. Yeah, I'm really interested to see where participatory modelling goes. Okay, next up we've got Josh Wolstenholme. Josh is from Hull University, and he's going to be talking to us about 3D models and 360 video of natural flood management interventions. So looking forward to some really nice presentation here. Thanks very much, Josh. If you want to use that microphone.
Sure, thank you. Cool. Hi, everyone. So thank you for the introduction. Thank you for Sim, wherever it is, for inviting me as well. So as I said, I'm talking about 3D models and 360 videos for geomorphological monitoring and engagement. And my background is I'm a PhD researcher at the University of Hull, sort of coming towards the end of it. And this is a bit of a side project. So how can we create new data visualizations for people to use, especially when they're working from home? Because learning in geoscience often requires 3D thinking and different visualizations of landforms, different flood interventions. And this is becoming more and more important, especially with more people working remotely, and thinking about how we can communicate these effectively. So I often find that 2D images on a flat screen are useful, but they're not as useful as they could be. And so what I want to show you is that there's a greater need, and everyone's got the technology more or less in their pocket where they could create these cool visualizations to help explore these different things. So my research is all about leaky dams, which are a form of natural flood management, which I'm sure most of you are aware of, but if you're not, they basically are semi-engineered structures designed to attenuate water during high flows and then slowly release these over time. But as you can see from these 4 different designs on here, the designs are very variable. And my research is more about how we characterize the geomorphology of these and how that affects flood risk management and sedimentation in the future. And so you can kind of tell on there, some of them are 3D models and some of them are images, but here's a better example. Hopefully that will play. So on the right of the screen there, you've got a picture of a crossbeam type leaky dam, whereas on the right, you've got a 3D model that was made with an iPad Pro in about 10 minutes. And usually creating this sort of design, or historically using survey grade technology, is extremely expensive in the tens of thousands of pounds, whereas this iPad costs about £1,000, and it produces a really nice visualization that we can host online and then add annotations to as well. But not only is it good for engaging with people, but we can also take measurements from this in software such as Cloud Compare. So we took measurements between the survey markers, those cross-grid things, and then we can compare that to our actual data from the cloud. So we see there's about a % difference in the vertical and about 6% difference in the horizontal and the scaling of our dam. Now, for a bit of kit that costs about 1/10 what the survey grade does, that's pretty good, especially when you can communicate and people can explore these themselves. So we could then go on and use this if we wanted to for subsequent research. So we could compare how the dam structure itself is changing, how the river bank is changing, and also how the water level is changing. So just an example of some of the resources that we can create. So these are made through Structure from Motion, which someone mentioned earlier, as well as through the iPad with its LiDAR on it. Let me just skip ahead. And we can also do things like hedgerow gaps, for example, to communicate these different things that you can see in the landscape, but you can't necessarily access. We couldn't take, for example, the dam in the middle there, which is in Nottingham, which is basically right next to a main road, a group of 30 school kids there, but they could all explore that in their own time and learn in a different way. So in addition to that, one of the things I've been working on is using 360 videos. Hopefully that will play. 360 videos to create tours of field sites so that people can go to these if they want to. So you've got the combination there of being able to explore on their own terms, subject to where I tell them to go, and to be able to look at the different things that we've installed. So this is a field site in the North Yorkshire Moors, or near the North Yorkshire Moors, where we've got trail cameras, water level monitoring kit, and all sorts of stuff that people can really navigate themselves around, really put themselves in the scene. And this is great for people who can't access these things, whether they're disabled or you can't get transport there, or this is the other side of the world. So just in summary, these are affordable tools to create powerful resources that most people have access to in their pockets. And there's the potential for repeat geomorphological monitoring, which is one of the key things that we're missing at the moment when talking about these kind of structures and how they influence flood risk management. So tomorrow I'm leading a workshop in the afternoon on this stuff, and we're going to go out and play with some of the equipment. And that will feed into the development of a higher education course in collating these data together, which is funded by the European Geoscience Union. Anyone who is coming to this tomorrow, please bring a laptop, and if you can, sturdy shoes, because I walked out to where we're going and it's a little bit unstable, but it'll be okay. So cool, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much, Josh. Yeah, that's the sort of thing that makes my GIS heart sing, looking at 3D visualizations. Okay, next up we have Joe Bradley from Stormwater Shepherds with a question for us. Is there really any phosphorus in urban runoff, or is it just a distraction? Thanks very much, Joe.
That was great, Josh. I feel really old watching things like that presentation from Josh. Thank you. Just a quick introduction, because most of you won't know who we are. We're Stormwater Shepherds. We're a UK-based charity looking at urban pollution and mostly road runoff, because that's my particular passion, but we do plastic pollution as well. So is there really road runoff, phosphorus in urban runoff, or is it just a distraction? So I have been doing some sampling of urban runoff for a water company in the northwest of England to see how much phosphorus there is in roof runoff, road runoff, yard runoff, just to try and understand what part this plays in the phosphorus story. I'm really nervous standing here because I'm about to show you an incomplete data set, and I know that the statisticians and the scientists in the room are going to wince, but I don't care. I'm going to do it anyway because I haven't. This is wet weather sampling. Somebody mentioned wet weather sampling earlier today. When it starts raining, I have to jump in the car and rush off to Bolton and fill bottles, and it just hasn't rained enough for me to get a full data set yet. What we were trying to work out is whether or not there was any benefit in putting retrofit SUDs on industrial estate sites in Bolton, and whether or not it was worth the water company investing in paying for those retrofit SUDs to capture phosphorus and take it out of the water environment. In short, the answer is no, it's not worth it, because there isn't enough phosphorus. So we were, I suppose, surprised, perhaps not surprised, to find very low levels, 12 micrograms per litre in a clean industrial yard coming off the runoff when it's raining. So barely any phosphorus there. This is total phosphorus. But what was interesting in the column on the right is we were starting to find more on the main road, which just makes me happy because I've been saying road runoff is polluted for a very, very long time. And also the parkland footpath, so the footpath through the municipal park where they had mowed the grass and the grass cuttings had fallen onto that path, it was like silage liquor. It looked a little bit like silage liquor. So interesting, but then when you compare that with agricultural runoff, 2,740 micrograms per litre and a good sewage effluent at 500 micrograms per litre, do we really think that urban phosphorus is worth our attention? And I'll tell you when I finish the survey, the data collection. We've got another sort of 5 or 6 sample runs to do, and I'm just waiting for rain. But what was interesting for me is asking myself, where's the phosphorus coming from? It's all very well looking for phosphorus, but we need to understand where it's coming from, because if there isn't any, we need to stop looking and move on, because we've got enough to do. And so this is just me starting to unpick the data a little bit. The sites with more phosphorus seem to be those where there is vegetation, either overhanging trees or little grassy embankments like the one outside the window that people are mowing, so you've got a source of phosphorus coming into the runoff. Vehicle exhaust emissions off the road, so it's particularly diesel vehicles. We think probably the grassy area where I got the grass cuttings off the footpath will have nutrients added to it, maybe not, but it's a pony thing, so there'll be pony poo. So you need poo or vegetation or you're not going to get phosphorus, and that was kind of what we concluded. But the thrust of this little presentation is what we're going to do with the data. So the SUDS manual, which some of you I hope are familiar with, is due to be revisited next year. And so this data and all the collaborative data that you're all gathering on phosphorus and nutrients more broadly will hopefully feed into the SUDS manual, and we will make the SUDS manual more specific to nutrient management. So that's hopefully what this tiddly little bit of data is going to help with, and there are lots of other people doing similar phosphorus work. For me, it's frustrating because the biggest polluter from urban towns and cities is road runoff, and if anybody else is remotely interested in road runoff, please speak to me. But this was particularly funded to look at the phosphorus. And that's it. But follow me on LinkedIn if you want to learn any more. I'll occasionally post on my LinkedIn story about what I'm up to. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Jo. That's great. Always like to see a bit of citizen science. Okay, don't forget to post your questions on Slido. It's CDUG 2022 if you've lost the code. And last but not least in this session, we've got Chris Bean from the Rivers Trust talking about the Blue Infrastructure Portal and mapping access to green space. So come on down, Chris.
Just click and go.
Yeah, just the arrow or something.
Do I need a click thing?
No, that doesn't work.
Good afternoon, everyone. A quick thank you to everyone for coming and listening to what I've got to say today. I will be talking about health and well-being generally and its relationship to green and blue spaces, and what we can do to improve the quality of our local communities with regards to this topic. Sure. So for the first few minutes of this talk, I'm going to give an update of the Environment Agency's Green Infrastructure Portal. I think they're working on version 2 at the moment, but version 1 is very much out there for us to all use. Then I'm going to briefly go through the Cabba Health and Wellbeing data evidence base that was developed by the Ribble Trust. And then finally, I'm going to go and talk a little bit about the Blue Space Experiential Indicator that's sort of the culmination of these 2 points of work and what we're going to be doing moving forwards into 2023. So, to begin with, the EA's Green Infrastructure Portal. This is the EA's Green Infrastructure Portal and Mapping Database. They've already published version 1.1 of the baseline Green Infrastructure Mapping Database with a significant amount of really useful information for partnerships out there. I don't know if anyone's been on it, but they've got, I think it's thematically grouped out, and then they have information that's broken out by 15-minute neighbourhoods, and they've done loads of awesome data manipulation with regards to local communities. They are updating their maps and green space standards in May 2023, and a full version 2.1 is due to come out in December 2023 as well. So do watch this space for the new Green Infrastructure Portal. Work on version 2 is already in process with lots of improvements planned. The ones that the Rivers Trust specifically are working on with Natural England include the health and well-being, experiential quality measures. So that's everything from Natural England. So secondly, I would like to take a look at the work conducted by the Rivers Trust. Over the last 2 forums, the Ribble RT has developed and shared the health and well-being data and evidence base, which can also be found online on, I think, our systems. I think I'm the owner of that now, so that's good. So the Cameron Health and Wellbeing Data Evidence Base provides a series of maps and data that highlights current health and wellbeing issues across England, with a particular focus on illnesses associated with mental health, with obesity and with inactivity. It's designed to help identify opportunities for the creation and improvement of public accessible spaces, publicly accessible green and blue spaces, improving health and well-being, and it can also be used to identify activities to encourage people to connect with nature as well. Let's see if this video works. Can't see if it's working. Nope. Maybe it's not. Well, there was a video, but it's fine. It's not that exciting. So this was meant to be a video that gives you a quick demo. This is the user interface. As you can see, it's thematically broken out at the top. It's your standard sort of mapping database where you can zoom in, navigate out. You have pop-ups that will come up and tell you information, then relink you to certain phenomena about the topic that you've looked at with regards to the health and wellbeing database. Okay, so lastly, and following on from the work that's been undertaken by the Rivers Trust, we're looking here, the CABA team and Natural England and the Rivers Trust Central are looking at scoping out what we call an experiential indicator for blue infrastructure. So this is looking at the quality of blue infrastructure in the terms of its impact on people. The work is framed around issues that emerged during the Phase 1 blue infrastructure mapping exercise undertaken by Natural England. And what we found is that there are 2 key concepts that we're going to be pursuing this year. So the first concept revolves around the consolidation of all of the data. We're aiming to compile all of the nationally available data in the scoping report and build a prototype tool for our partners to use. So this will be a GIS mapping tool. Our report focuses on the development of a national experiential index that can be mapped spatially and hopefully will incorporate local data too, as we are well aware of the importance of local data. So this will be used to identify areas with the highest or with the lowest experiential value based upon the differences between users. This is quite a difficult topic because subjective experience is a very difficult thing to quantify. So I'm not sure it's been done before, but yeah, watch this space for the attempt of version 1.0. Rather than using or creating a static model developed through a linear process, as per traditional composite mapping and layer formation, this tool uses a dynamic and iterative approach to developing models that use weightings and different calculations as well. Yeah, we look forward to developing it in the future and for you all to be using it, we hope. So thank you very much.
Right, thank you very much, all the speakers. If you'd like to quickly come down the front, we can have a short QA panel because we are overrunning slightly. But yeah, do post any questions you'd like to ask the panel. And if I can ask people, remind them to speak up because the audio in the room isn't as good as it was on the Zoom call. Okay, so just waiting for everyone to get down the front. We got enough chairs, right? You have that one, I'll stand. Okay, so the first question I've got is for Alison. So, is there any quantification in the systems dynamics models so we can see the relative importance of different processes?
Yes, there absolutely is. So what we're doing on Water for Tomorrow is the model that I showed you today is the whole system model, and we're focusing on that model on kind of qualitative information, but we're also making a partial model that will include the agricultural model, the hydrogeological model, ecology model, and we are quantifying that model, and that's really, really useful in order to be able to understand the dynamics of the system and identify kind of leverage points for trying to kind of steer the system in the direction that you want to go in. So, yeah.
Thanks, Alison. So next one I've got is for Josh. Can your 3D model predict any scouring around leaky barriers over time in high flows?
I don't think it could predict them, but you could definitely use it to do subsequent monitoring. So you could start to see, you could do 3D models of difference, which we're going to go over tomorrow. So you could start to see change and then potentially identify that earlier and in a different, more detailed way to what you would be seeing when you go and visit it in person and take a picture, for example.
Thank you. And we've got another one for you. You may as well hold the mic.
Sure.
So for photogrammetry at larger scales, you would have ground control points to improve accuracy. Are there any other ways to improve accuracy at the smaller scale?
Other than ground control points, I think for this type of data collection, going slower when you're taking pictures, making sure you've got good lighting, it's overcast rather than lots of shadow, so your camera picks up more and more detail. But you always need ground control points, no matter the scale. You could simply measure between them with a tape measure to help scale them. You don't have to use a high resolution technique like a total station or a GPS unit.
Thanks, Josh. And if you pass the mic to Joe, I've got one for you now. So any idea how important the flows of those urban sources were, as in loads, in your study, as it's the loading that's important, not just the concentration?
Yeah, so we calculated the loadings because we've got rainfall data. We know the surface area of the sites we were working on, and that's what allowed us to work out whether or not the load off the site was worth investing the money in the bioretention zone. So yeah, we can do loads, and we can therefore see what proportion of the input to the river system it is compared to agricultural and sewage inputs. And I think it's going to be teeny weeny, being very scientific again.
Teeny weeny being
a scientific term.
Thank you. I've just been handed another mic. Thanks, Joe. If you could pass the mic to Chris on your left. So Chris, there's a question here. Can you see a link between your work and the climate just work that we heard about earlier?
I guess there is always a link in the work that I'm trying to do at the RT with climate data and availability. So there are some layers in the model specifically that I'll be looking to put in from UKCP with regards to stress hot days and average hot months and excessive rain and drought, as these have a direct experience on how people might be experiencing that space. So there definitely is scope and opportunities to be incorporating that sort of data and collaboration in the experiential indicator if it takes off.
Thanks, Chris. And last one, I've got two-parter for Heather. Heather, I've got a question. Why do you need hub software to collect nature-based solutions delivery data for the coastal and catchment partnerships?
So I'll take that one first because
Yes.
I've got a short memory.
Go on.
So the first question is essentially the software. So what we've done in the past is use Survey 123, and we've been able to make design surveys in the way that we can share them publicly and kind of restrict how we then control how that data is then shown to other people. So basically we can allow people to use it without a license is what I'm trying to get at. So the Esri Hub software allows community users, so that's like a free user, so we can allow users across the movement or the wider environmental network, so I guess on the coastal as well as any kind of aspect that we're working on really at the catchment coast, can use the software for free and put their nature-based solutions in, and then they can also have personalised data, so they'll only be able to see their own data. So it's quite useful to tailor it and allow it to be like a kind of community-driven action. I hope that answers.
Yeah, thanks, Heather. And the last one for you. Is there an API to access the data sets to pull them into other applications?
Yes, so all of the data which is on the Coastal Data Explorer, if it's come from ArcGIS Online, it will be available through the ArcGIS Online API.
Great, thanks very much. If you can show your appreciation for the speakers, and we'll head on to the next session.
Okay, so our next little session is a showcase into some of the research that's happening at Durham University with our young researchers. It's kind of a lot of the vision behind this was partly to look at how other parts of the world are looking at these problems. So we're going to step out of the UK, first to South Korea with Dr. Muyeol Jung, who's going to be talking about water quality monitoring with diatoms. So I need to give you this. So if you just clip it on. Okay.
Hello, my name is Muyeol Jung, and I just finished my PhD this summer in Durham University, and I'm delighted to be back in Durham again, and delighted to be presenting part of my PhD research here. The title is Water Quality Monitoring Using Species Composition of Diatom Assemblages in Nakdong River in South Korea. So South Korea has high population and the seasonal imbalance in precipitation, mostly concentrated on summer due to typhoons and monsoon. And the country also has algae bloom and water pollution in river. So as a result, in 2009, the South Korean government launched the 4 major rivers restoration project, which completed in 2012 April, which include dredging and removal of sediment bar and the construction of barrage. So the study area, the Nakdong River, is actually located southeastern part of South Korea. So this river has 8 barrages from upstream to downstream, which are labeled B1 to B8. And here are the picture of the barrage, and they are controlling river flow since 2012. And this picture, this satellite image, shows the left-hand side picture shows before the construction, and right column shows the after construction. So as you can see, a lot of the sediment are removed from the river channel. And despite the effort, in 2015, we have still a lot of algae bloom in the river. Also, so as a part of monitoring water quality, so diatoms are very widely used as a biological indicator for water quality assessment. And one of them is TDI, developed by Kelly in Durham University. And the South Korea also used this MTDI index, but we slightly modified by deducting a score from 100. So the numbers close to 100 indicate the good condition of the river, and 0 indicating the bad water quality. And this actually index is based on the sensitivity of diatom taxa to phosphorus concentration in the water. And this is widely used in the country. And so TDI index is regularly monitored throughout the year, twice a year in spring and autumn. So the aim of this research is to examine the changes in water quality and the diatom assemblages in relation to the huge engineering work done in 2009. So firstly, I examined the result of MTDI result. So these are published by the South Korean government. So these are just internal report. So from top to the bottom, so the results are presented by the catchment level. So, and also the vertical line in 2012 indicates the completion of the barrage. MTDI result actually showing the whole sub-catchment in the main river has significantly improved from the very bad or bad grade to above satisfactory level, or even close to excellent level. And however, it doesn't show any change around the completion of the barrage in the main river. And also, one of the features we can notice here is the significant improvement in ND3 to ND6. So there's a huge jump in the MTDI score. which falls in 2015 and 2016. However, I use the mean change analysis to track down how actually water quality changed in the Nakdong River. And this is just one of example as the COD. So COD level in the Nakdong River actually not improve, actually is getting worse. As you can see, the mean change usually falls on around the completion of the barrage. And as you can see from the upstream to downstream, just the whole mainstream indicating the worsening trend of water quality. And the funny thing is, and the BOD, COD, and the chlorophyll, and all other pH and DO all showing the upward trend throughout the time. However, the only variable that shows decreased trend is only TP concentration. So there is actually huge disagreement between the MTDI result and what is actually happening in water quality. So what I proposed to assess river health and assess water quality better using Diatom is I combined the Diatom data with the water quality data, and I performed cluster analysis based on the similarity of Diatom assemblages. And here's actually the result. So we have 4 major groups from G1 to G4, and the G1 to G3s are divided by the pollution level. G3 indicates higher pollution level, and the G1 indicates the least pollution. And the G4 is related to drought in the catchment area. So as you can see, in 2009, you can see clearly downward environmental gradient from like the least polluted to the just most polluted water quality. However, this kind of downward gradient interrupted by the expansion of G3b, so which was mostly frequently found in the downstream area only. However, this expanded to the upstream area. And also the other feature we can watch is more frequent occurrence of G3a. So G3a is dark green color in the graph, and this G3a was very rarely observed before the construction. So this is also a result of the barrage construction. And here's the summary. So in the Nakdong catchment, the improvement of MTDI result can be explained by decline of TP concentration. And however, the overemphasis of the MTDI result may give a false belief about what actually happening in the river. So what I want to suggest here is like the holistic understanding of river water quality and the river health can be achieved using Diatom species in a long-term time scale. So as you can see, we can see a clear picture of what actually the barrage construction has impacted on the water quality. And this approach can help environmental engineers to see the efficiency of their river management plan, and also they can just establish better plans in the right direction. Thank you very much.
So thank you very much. Our next speaker is Ivo Pink. He's been working on climate change impacts on flood frequency and flood magnitude, moving a little bit closer to home, but not by much. So we kind of, I'll pass over to Ivo to introduce his talk. There's a magnet on the back if you want to, or flip it onto the...
Well, does this work? Can you hear me? Yeah. Okay. Yeah, hi, my name is Ivo Pink. I'm a PhD researcher here at Durham, and I'm talking about predicting the climate change impact on catchment hydrology using an ensemble of climate predictions. So first of all, why would we do this? So we can use our current knowledge about the future climates to turn this into or to predict future runoff, and then develop adaptation and mitigation strategies to adapt to changes in water availability or water quality or flood risk management, for example. So, and by using an ensemble of climate predictions, we can actually estimate the uncertainty that is inherent in the climate predictions. And we do this by simply applying a set of hydrological models with a set of predictions from an ensemble of climate models. I do this for the Karnali Basin or for the Karnali River in Nepal. And the objective is to see or to investigate how climate change impacts the flood flows. And we use an ensemble of 12 different CMIP6 climate models for this analysis. And I want to jump right into some of the results. So this is the annual maximum flow plotted on the y-axis, and on the x-axis is the simulation period. And we simulated 3 different scenarios. So in red, the baseline scenario, the past, and then in green and in blue, the medium emission and the high emission scenario. So we have a set of 64 hydrological models, so 64 different parameter sets to estimate the uncertainty in our hydrological predictions. And then we apply these 64 parameter sets with the ensemble of 12 CMIP6 models. So we have around about 700 realizations in total. And the solid line is the median of this 750, ensemble of 750 realizations. And in the dashed lines are in the interval of the dashed lines are 68% of the realizations, and in the interval of the dotted lines are 95% of our predictions. So we can already see an increasing trend in flows towards the end of the century, especially for the high emission scenario, but there's a lot of annual variability in these flood flows. So we calculated the running mean to get rid of this temporal variability and emphasize the trend. And what we can see is that clearly the flood magnitudes are projected to, so this is the running mean over a 30 years period of time. So we can see that the flood flows are projected to increase, especially for the high emission scenario, but also for the medium emission scenario, it increases towards the end of the century. So now we want to have a look how this is composed. So how is it different for the 12 models that we are using? And we can see several different kind of types of predictions. So we have the Earth models, EC Earth models that predict a big increase in flows, then the INM models that predict a moderate increase in flows, and the MPI models that actually don't predict any increase in flows. So there's a lot of variability in our predictions that result from the different climate input that we use. And then we conducted a flood frequency analysis for these different predictions. And on the left-hand side, we have the flood frequency analysis for the baseline period. On the right-hand side, for the high emission scenario for the far future. And the shaded area indicates the ensemble of all our frequency curves, and the solid dashed line, the solid black line is the median flood frequency curve for the whole ensemble. And then the colored lines are the median for the single climate models. And if we see how the flood frequencies and magnitudes change from the baseline to the future, we have actually a range of different changes. So in the lowest case, the flood magnitude for the 100-year event actually decreases by 12%, while in the highest model, the flood magnitude increases by 155%, 45%. So if we would just use a single model, we would get very different results based on the model that we selected. So to conclude, the predictions that our hydrological model gives us is very sensitive towards the climate projection that we use to run the model. So it takes a very good reason to select a single climate model over other models. So if we don't know which model actually works best in our area or for our research objective, we should simulate an ensemble to get to predict the uncertainty that is related to the climate projections. Thanks.
So I think you're doing Q&A. So.
So we've got a short Q&A session. So if you've got any questions, got a short Q&A session now. So if you've got any questions you want to put in, can we put on Slido? Whilst you do that, I'm going to take chair's action and ask questions myself. So, what I think will be interesting is, Muyeol, what do you think the climate change impacts are likely to do to the diatoms and the water quality?
Yes, climate change is going to affect diatoms because diatom also has seasonality throughout the season. So because my study area is a big catchment and the river that I dealt with was mostly stream order 5 to 9. So they don't show very strong seasonality. However, in a tributary area where the stream orders are like 5 or 6, I found some very strong seasonality throughout the 10 years. So potentially we'll see more changes in diatom assemblages, as well as also like in these conditions with the barrage controlling all the river flow. So climate change definitely affect diatom assemblage and water quality.
So, Ivo, I'm not going to ask you your views on what's going to happen to the ecology in Nepal, because that's not what you've been looking at. But what you presented so far, you presented kind of down to the end of the catchment and the change in magnitude and frequency. Obviously, there's going to be a lot of problems about how you communicate that uncertainty. But what are these changes in flood magnitude going to mean to that community further downstream?
Well, so in my in the overall project, I'm looking at how does the flood, climate change affect the runoff that is coming down or that is entering the floodplain, but also how it is changing the floodplain itself. So how is the morphology changing, or how is this affected by the flood flows or by the changes in the flood flows? How it will affect the population downstream, it is very hard to actually accurately quantify it, because it is a data scarce area where we lack a lot of information, and it's a very active area. So the area, the floodplain that I'm looking at is on a fan, or it's located on a fan, and actually the river. The river aggregates, so sediments is deposited, and at some point this can lead to a complete switch of the channel. And if that happens, then the river will flow at a different area, and it is a very densely populated area in Nepal itself, but also downstream in India. So I cannot really predict what it means if the channel switches, or if the river switches channel, but it will be disastrous.
So a few questions have come in from the audiences. So we'll stay with you, Ivo, if that's okay. So first question is, have you looked at flood timing changes as well as the magnitude of the flood peak?
Yes. So the timing actually doesn't really change. So neither it changes when the flood is happening, nor it changes how long the flood is, or the duration of the flood. So that remains quite stable across all models.
And to what extent have you found that the change in flood magnitude is driven by changes in precipitation or changes in glacier melt?
It is driven by an increase in heavy precipitation. And this is actually also, if you recall the maps that Glenn McGregor showed, there was this map about the increase in temperature extremes, where we had the increase, but with the 3 dots, so with the high confidence. and the increase in heavy precipitation, where we just had this one dot, so a lower confidence. And the figure that I showed with the flow of these 12 models is actually exactly that. So the lower confidence results in the big variation in predicted flows.
And does the ensemble of models come together over time so that over the decade we'll get a clearer picture of the impacts?
I'm not sure if I got the question right. What means by what it come together?
Rather than diverging and going off into different places, do they kind of get to the same point at the end of the 21st century?
No.
Or do you end up with different points?
Yeah.
What that uncertainty spread is?
Yeah. So we have some models where we actually don't have any increase towards the end of the century. All models agree in the way that the flow for the high emission scenario is predicted higher than the flow for the medium emission scenario, but the rate of change is very different throughout the models.
Okay, thank you. So, Muyeol, are your assemblages defined by present absence of different species or relative abundance?
Yeah, I use diatom assemblages, but at the relative abundance level. So I gathered all the diatom species identified in the catchment throughout the 10 years, and the number of species identified was very close to 400, but I removed all the species that is less than 1% at the relative abundance level. And in the end, I use about 70 species that account for about 95% of all diatom species.
One last question. So do you plan on applying your results to any kind of UK rivers? So your results and your techniques and your way of approaching the water quality? It sounds like somebody wants you to.
I haven't actually thought about applying my approach to the UK river at the moment, but because this project was implemented in 4 major rivers in South Korea, and my study is one of them, so I want to use this approach to other 3 watershed area and then see how actually diatom responded to construction of the barrage.
Okay. So thank you both for the talks and for the questions. Thank you for the questions. And coffee?